This episode of Instant Analysis is brought to you by Platinum Storage Group and Real Estate Investments. For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for Instant Analysis of the Todd McNair NCAA trial. And after 24 days, including 6 days of deliberation, the jury found in favor of the NCAA. It's not a criminal case, but they essentially found the NCAA not guilty because Todd originally sued for defamation. So general thoughts, Dan, what are your takeaways from today?
Well, it was a high burden, as everybody said. I think the other day we were trying to come up with successful defamation lawsuits. And I think we came up with a Carol Burnett against the National Enquirer 30 years ago. And maybe the University of Virginia dean who sued the Rolling Stone magazine a year and a half ago, something like that. And after that, people look and say, I don't know, this is really, really hard under the Sullivan standard of a public figure and how you have to prove malice and, clear and convincing evidence and all of that. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. This was a very difficult case. They found the NCAA, and I do like your expression, they found the NCAA not guilty, but they wanted to find them guilty. I mean, afterwards when the jury got together and with the lawyers, they wanted to send a message. I think presiding juror, Bruno basically said, we didn't have a tool to use to get the NCAA. It was too, under the law, there isn't a way that we could have found against the NCAA, but we would have liked to.
Yeah, he said that the evidence was screaming against the NCAA, but they didn't have that tool. He said that it was interesting. He said, I don't want the NCAA to feel like they got away with something. We wanted to do something right. We wanted to make the right call, but ultimately the burden of proof was too high for the jury.
Well, when they say it essentially comes down to a phone call, which the NCAA had used to make up what was on that phone call with Todd McNair, Lloyd Lake phone call, and it was fine, in 2010 for the NCAA to say, well, this is what he said, and this is why we know that, blah, blah, blah. And then in this trial, the NCAA says, hey, nobody but those two people can possibly know what was on that phone call, and they can't prove it. And then, of course, the NCAA didn't have to prove it, but Todd did. And it came down to that. We always, in this case, it's always come down to that phone call. Mm-hmm. And how do you prove that? Like, one of the Todd's attorneys said, you had to have a tape of that call. Without that, it was very difficult. I mean, I probably would have said that I thought the NCAA passed the bar of falsity when they made up what was on the phone call and then published the findings saying this is what we knew was on the phone call. But for the jurors, that wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm. Now, the jurors voted 9-3 in favor of the NCAA. A couple days back when we thought there was going to be a mistrial when they were deadlocked at 8-4, we thought that it was originally 8-4 in favor of Todd McNair, specifically because the foreman said, we also peaked at question 4 and we're also 8-4, which is confusing because if you're voting no on question 3, you're not going forward. So that was the confusing thing. Were you surprised that suddenly it turned around 9-3 for the NCAA?
I was surprised until we saw the jury room door open. We saw the jurors file out. We didn't see a single one make eye contact with Todd McNair. They looked unhappy. They didn't look like they felt like they'd necessarily done the right thing, but that they couldn't do the right thing, they thought. And so this was not a happy jury. This was a jury that, wished they could have done something else, but in staying with the reading of the law, they didn't think they could, and they weren't maybe, could you have given them more reasons to go that way? I don't know. But under the particular case and the evidence they heard and the testimony and all of that, they thought they couldn't get there. And again, really, really high bar to get over if you're a public figure and you're suing for defamation, especially if the people who you say defamed you pretty much line up and all have the same story. And, it was just our call. We did the best we could to make that call. Hey, we're kind of sorry, but that's the way it goes.
That was the interesting thing, is that the jury also said that Dennis Thomas, a voting member on the COI, and Eleanor Myers, also a voting member on the COI, they said that they were very influential in their decision. Dennis Thomas, they said his experience as a coach really helped sway them. Eleanor Myers looked like she wanted to do the right thing. And those were the two people we said that were the biggest characters of the case besides Todd McNair. They were also in the last week before the case was submitted to the jury. How much do you think that they actually had an impact in their decision?
I don't think there's any question when they say, I mean, we listen to Dennis Thomas and we say he has no idea what he's talking about, and he doesn't. He's just removed, and he has no idea how, he gave all this information about how football coaches work and recruiting goes, and he was, he's in the MEAC, and he went to Alcorn State, and that's like on another planet in terms of he was not hesitant about second guessing every single thing Todd McNair did. You wish probably a little bit stronger attack on Dennis Thomas to show here's a guy that really, the only things he could remember were his opinions. Everything else seemed to be a blur, for him. And for Eleanor Myers, she was portrayed as this grandmotherly type law professor. I mean, let's face it, she's on the last couple of months of a 9-year term. She started on the Todd McNair case. She's finishing up 9 years on the Committee on Infraction. You think they were going to have a Perry Mason moment where she said, "You got me, copper. We did it." No, they weren't going to say that. But she kind of got off scot-free. I think you picked up on that right away. That she kind of was able to get out of there as a person who you could almost believe. And I think one of the problems that people that really know the case knew that wasn't the case. But these are jurors. 9 or 10 of them had never heard of the NCAA before. So they're coming at this from a different place, and the NCAA circled the wagons well enough. They have good lawyers. I mean, we second guessed some of the stuff, and we didn't like some of the things they did, but they're good lawyers, and they did a really good job with the case they had. And they went hard. And I think today, afterwards, they were a little bit sheepish about how this went. I mean, they were looking at Todd McNair, looking at the jurors, and kind of saying things like, well, the NCAA has heard what's happened, and a lot of things have been raised in this case that the NCAA knows they didn't do right. And they're in the process of changing them. Whether that's true or not. The part about a lot of things have been exposed in this case over the years that the NCAA is really embarrassed about. Yeah, they're embarrassed about, but they don't, they got through it. They had to spend millions of dollars to, defend this case, but they got through it.
Another interesting thing that we learned from the jury was that they went over Lloyd Lake's entire interview with the NCAA, I believe in 2008. The foreman actually read all 6 hours of Lake's interview with the NCAA. They said that they didn't find Lloyd Lake credible, but they did wonder why Lloyd Lake wasn't called to the stand in the trial. Why do you think that was?
Oh, I mean, I think they wanted to know more. And they would have taken I think they might have taken, a coach who if you could have gotten him here, who didn't hire Todd or whatever. And not that any of those things would have been easy to pull off. I know everybody was really hesitant on both sides about Lloyd Lake and what the heck he might say. But maybe, there just wasn't, in a case like this, do you need a smoking gun? And there was no smoking gun. It was like, well, these were the people at the NCAA. Maybe they got it wrong. Maybe they broke all their bylaws. Maybe they let people deliberate who weren't supposed to deliberate. Maybe they kind of lied about whether they did deliberate or not. Yeah, we understand all of those things they did, but can we prove that what was said on that phone call? Can Todd McNair prove that the NCAA flat out lied? I could have said they could have, but the jury didn't get there.
Yeah. Not to be a backseat driver, lawyer, if you will, but Todd McNair's lawyers relied solely on Todd McNair for Todd McNair's side of the story. They didn't call anyone else to back up his story. Do you feel like they could have done that differently, considering how, knowing what we know about the jury, they needed more information to know about Todd McNair?
I think it's a difficulty in some ways. If you've got anybody with any college coaching ambitions, anybody with, connected to a school that could come under, the glare of the NCAA, might be really hesitant. I mean, they were in trouble for hiring Lane Kiffin as the next head coach after Pete Carroll. These people who can do a lot of damage to you were not very happy about that. So you could see how anybody like that might want to stay away. Was there somebody in the NFL that you could call that would have answered that? I think that was one of the places I think they went after Todd really hard, was the job search.
Yeah.
And did he do the job and they tried to portray that to the jury really hard about needed to do more. A lot of that was stupid, silly, not the way college football coaching works, but they sold that story, and they sold it hard, and they got a guy like Dennis Thomas to back them up. And was there a person that could contradict Dennis Thomas? You would have liked to have seen that person sitting there in front of the jury.
Mm-hmm. I think an example that highlights the point you just made, one of the jurors turned to McNair and said, well, you'll get a job soon. Don't worry, it'll work out for you.
She was one of the ones that voted against him.
Yes, and so I think that proves the point that this jury wasn't exactly informed or knew about what actually happens in a college coaching search, and it shows how complicated this case is if you're not in the college football world or know anything about the details of this case.
Yeah, this is a complicated case for the lawyers, for the judge. Just imagine you get dropped into this, and you've never even heard of the NCAA. I mean, you're hit with all these, reading of bylaws and testimony and video, depositions and all that kind of stuff where they're going over and over, one word here and a word there and all that. I mean, it's hard to even imagine. What it does tell you is the jury did really bond with Todd McNair. They felt bad for Todd McNair. You would say one thing was a 12-0 vote was, we really feel bad for Todd McNair. We wish we could have done something for Todd McNair. I mean, that was unanimous. I mean, if that was, if it was how you feel about Todd McNair, he won the case. But that's not the way it was decided. But they genuinely, they didn't want to leave without telling him how bad they felt for him.
Yeah, that was especially evident in the three women who voted for Todd McNair. Two of them hugged McNair's wife, hugged Todd McNair. It was kind of an emotional scene. And then Todd McNair said, can I see the three people who voted for me over here? And he kind of called them over and said, we couldn't fully hear, but Todd McNair got emotional. But there was an intense bond between the three that voted for him. They told him to keep going, keep your head up. But the three women said that it seemed like the 9 other jurors right away knew what they were voting about Todd McNair, and they kind of forced the issue. Let's look at more evidence. Let's keep looking at it. But they, from their perspective, said that the 9 already had their opinion made up from the beginning.
Yeah, I think just because you had to make it kind of this visceral feel of this case. And Todd McNair was wonderful on the stand. Yeah. And that was kind of a positive moment. Did you have to come in and then do some real damage, some body blows and bloody up the NCAA people? I don't know that they thought they did, but now maybe, because the NCAA wasn't hesitant calling Todd an unethical, lying, blah, 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 whatever, the things that were in the emails and also in court. And they called him, he was lazy, he didn't try to get a job. They said a lot of, negative stuff about him. One would have liked to have seen that counteracted a little bit more. Again, Bruce Burlett is a great attorney. Scott Carr is a great attorney. Scott Thompson is a great attorney. Had this been a trial by judge, is it a completely different story? Maybe. I mean, I think it's really hard to try to look at the kinds of juries you get and say, where is their head? What are they hearing? What are they seeing? What do they know? And, this was one, it would have been very hard to read until basically they came out the last time, and then you knew. Yeah. But it's a little late then. Where this goes, I don't know what this, trial tells us. about what happens next. Does the NCAA pick up anything off of this other than, hey, we got away with it, and we're gonna learn all the stuff that happened here, and we're not gonna get caught again? I don't know. Does the NCAA take this and do anything and said, okay, we didn't do this right, we didn't do this fairly, and we're not going to do this again? I don't think so with these people that were on this committee on infractions panel, or the people that were on the infractions appeals committee. When you talked about how many hours they went over the testimony and have it read and all, I'm thinking, wow, these people off the streets of Los Angeles spent way more time and put in way more effort than the Infractions Appeals Committee did for the NCAA, who basically rubber stamped it, said, no, we didn't get that testimony, no, we didn't get, nobody told us that, no, we didn't, boom, over. That's amazing. I think the thing I walk away with is saying, if only Todd McNair could have gotten the kind of fair treatment from the NCAA that the NCAA got from a jury in Los Angeles and a judge who they kept trying to get kicked off the case. Lucky for the NCAA that they were treated the way they didn't treat Todd McNair and USC.
Mm-hmm. As far as going forward, Kostas Stokojevic, the NCAA's lawyer, when he was asked about a possible appeal from Todd McNair's side, he said, I don't know, there's a lot of steps to get to there, so we'll see. Bruce Brulette had a short statement. He said he's very disappointed. They're weighing their options, and they'll see what they'll do next. But McNair's team was pretty stunned. I think that was they weren't expecting the verdict that was reached. I know you kind of went into it, but what's your guess of what goes forward as far as legally?
Well, there is actually another legal procedure, whether it'll be a trial or not. The McNair attorneys have asked for declaratory relief against the NCAA, saying that the show cause penalty is against California law, and they're going to brief that over the summer. By August, whether they'll actually have a trial or witness or witnesses, or whether the judge will just rule on the briefs. But there's still another part of this case where they're asking for Judge Schaller to declare the NCAA's ability to put a coach, a show cause penalty on a coach, that is against California law. So that for sure is one more part of this case that's still alive. As far as an appeal, I don't know if you get it in front of an appeals panel of just judges, do you get a different look, a different read of the law? I don't know.
Yep. So we ended up spending more than a month here outside the Stanley Moss Courthouse and inside that tiny courtroom. It's hard to believe that it's almost over. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Well, I guess the thought you get, because you don't get to see it inside of a trial, certainly not one that's more than a month like this. And you would come here every day, and with all the people coming and going and all the excuse me, all the issues that are involved in the custody hearings and the bail revocation rooms and just courtroom after courtroom after courtroom, and going past all these these people, and this is a tough place in a lot of ways. And then you get to the fifth floor in Department 46, and you realize everybody is really, really working hard and trying to be as fair and follow the law, follow the rules, follow everything the way they're supposed to. Judge Schaller, I think, did a magnificent job, as much as the NCAA tried to get him off the case. The jury was terrific. How hard that must be to, 9 or 10 of them have never heard of the NCAA, and here they are, for more than a month, they're dealing with these issues that those of us who've, been paying attention to them since, before 2010, had a sense of where it was. But you just wish that the NCAA could have been here for more than just kind of a couple of days. Seemed like they were celebrating at times, and could have been here and seen how hard these people tried to be fair and to follow all the rules and to follow all their processes. And even though they wanted it to go the other way, clearly they wanted to be able to find in Todd McNair's favor, what did they do? They followed the rules as they saw them. We may not all agree with that, But they followed the rules, and they came up with a result that they weren't really happy about. But that's what they thought the law called for. If only the NCAA, in the way they had treated Todd and USC, would have been so scrupulous as to follow fair process, follow their own bylaws, and not kind of take the law into their own hands because they wanted a particular result. If they would have wanted, for example, if this trial, if they would have said, what result do you want? Todd McNair wins. But these people said, no, we have rules. This is the way we understand the law, and we can't quite get there. That makes you feel as bad as we feel for Todd, bad as we feel for the fact that the NCAA can walk away and say, hey, we won. You feel good about the sense of the rule of law, and this is how it works in America, and you wish it worked that way for the NCAA when they do something. You wish, again, that Todd McNair would have gotten the same fair process from the NCAA that the NCAA got in a courtroom in Los Angeles against Todd McNair.
Yep, all right, that's going to wrap it up for the Todd McNair trial against the NCAA, at least part one. We want to thank you guys for watching. I know a lot of you guys watch every day, so we appreciate it. We want to thank our sponsor again. Wouldn't be possible without them. Hopefully the next time you see us, we'll be talking about football, less about legal things. Any final words?
Yeah, thanks for Platinum Stories, Skip Elefante. Really appreciate your letting us do this, and we really appreciate you guys who were living and dying with Todd. And life doesn't always work out that way. You can't feel any worse for Todd for all that he's had to go through, and still comes up short on this one. I guess we find out as we move on what the real definition of fight on is, because what else do you do? What else has Todd done? And I think that's all you can do is fight on, get it right, and hopefully something good is out there for Todd McNair, and that's all we'll say.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's going to wrap it up. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.